get started.
Good morning, good day, good evening to everyone who's come to the Virtual Dharma Temple. And Lisa had a wonderful idea of bringing us together for contemplating world peace today. And she reached out to Derek, and he's graciously accepted to lead the practice. And yeah, so for many reasons, we're all joined together as a community, and let's welcome Derek and get ready to sit.
Thanks, Karen. Super quick housekeeping items. I will put Derek's email in the chat for if anyone wants to send Derek Donna, that's the way to get in touch with him. I'll put my email in the chat in case somebody needs to follow up about the recording. We are recording. I wasn't going to because it's a practice, but not a talk, but people have asked. So, but it won't be, I don't expect that we're going to be posting it. Well, maybe we will. So I'm not sure actually. Please keep yourself on mute during the practice. And at the end, we'll wrap up the formal practice, dedicate the merit, and then if people want to chat and wish happy birthdays and do fun things afterwards, we'll know when the practice is over and the chat is available. And if you just give me one more moment of your patience, I just wanted to say a quick word about why I wanted to ask for this to happen today. So we all know that there's a crisis going on in Ukraine, and I'm not going to say much about that because I'm not the expert on that whatsoever. But I wanted to say that peace is more than a temporary void in the absence of violence, and that freedom is more than a temporary void in the absence of oppression. And as we're going to see, and as we already know with this practice, that wholesome states have life, they have power, and they need to be cultivated. They must be cultivated. And those of us here today have relative privilege to sit at our computers on a Saturday morning and meditate together. And we also have the tools and the knowledge. Some people in this room are super powerful meditators. Everybody in this room is a super powerful meditator. And some of us have studied with Rinpoche or other great teachers of our time. And we have urgent cause to do this work for the benefit of others who can't right now. So all that remains is to do it. I personally think every heart naturally knows how to pray for peace inherently, and that we don't need any special training for that. On the other hand, I think that we'll find that this practice amplifies and cultivates that natural wish, and that if we do it together, the whole is more than the sum of parts. So that was why I pushed for this super fast meditation for everybody to get together, and I'm so grateful that you're all here. And thank you so much. Derek, the floor is yours. I will now go on mute.
Hi, folks. Shall we start? I think what we'll do is we'll do the traditional Pali invocation, and then maybe a bit of an orientation for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll do some practice. Then we'll wrap up, and if you have comments or questions, we can do them then, and then get on to the other connections folks might want to make through this Zoom afterward. Yeah, so let's start with invocation. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Compassion, non-clinging awareness, wisdom. And a bit about the practice that we're about to do. We've just last fall passed through the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in New York. And when that happened, Rinpoche was teaching a closed retreat in Kinmount at the Dharma Center. And because it was closed, there was no communication. People didn't necessarily know what was going on. Rinpoche came in the afternoon of that day of September 11th in 2001. And he said there'd been an event in New York and said that there would likely be war and conflict as a result. And then he said, that the rabbis and priests and lamas, religious people, the imams, would pray for peace and would be praying for peace. But he thought, unfortunately, their prayers would not be enough. And he then, citing a line from the Bible, he said, but if some of you do the practice, this will have a much bigger effect, because heaven is more moved by the prayers of one sinner than the prayers of 1,000 saints. Of course, to a few of us in the room, perhaps, the likelihood that we as sinners could have that kind of impact was very encouraging. And sounds like a team we were born for. And then he announced that on the following weekend, he was going to give the Maitri empowerment of loving kindness, but that he would ask the Dharma Center, in addition, the principal practice that he has advised everyone doing was the Four Immeasurables, known as the Brahma Viharas. And he said, you should pray without ceasing. And Mark Weber was there at the time, and Sonia Moriso. And as senior teachers, they took over leading the pujas on the Four Immeasurables, the Brahma Viharas, for the next weeks. And then when they left, it was handed on down the line, and eventually I was left with the responsibility. And so I led the pujas for the practice through till the spring. And the method of practicing was the old style method, the way the Buddha first gave the instructions, which, as many of you know, you've done it, many of you have done it. It's in the 13th of the long suttas of the Buddha. It's the directional method. In the old text, it's the four cardinal directions, and up and down, and then filling in all the space with the immeasurables of immeasurable metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. So those are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. And the way we practiced them during that approximately 6-month period was just doing one immeasurable for a period of days, 4 or 5 days, and then moving to the second and the third and the fourth. And as some of you may have had the same reaction I had when first hearing that we had to practice something that sounded like infinite loving kindness for all beings. You might have had, probably you didn't have this reaction, but in any case, mine was, it's difficult enough for me to love something, one thing, let alone a whole bunch of things. That seems really difficult. And fortunately, one of the days when I was feeling particularly cheeky and argumentative, I chased Rinpoche to the door of the temple, which is where, you know, most of the important teaching took place, was as he was leaving and putting his shoes on. And I stopped him and said I couldn't do loving kindness like this. It just didn't seem possible. And in that very kind and understanding way he had when he was interrupted, he turned at the door and said, well, can you do friendly? Can you do warm? And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, well, that's it. It's just basic warmth and friendliness. Do that. And so that was very helpful and got me off the hook in some ways for what I thought was this very difficult task. And it's proved to be, as I've read the text since, that's the actual original etymology of the word. Maitreya or metta comes from mitra, which is friend. It means friendliness. So it's basic warmth and friendliness. And that's what we'll do today, the first of the immeasurables. And importantly, as I've been studying the texts, the Buddha almost never, I've only been able to find one occasion out of 28 times, where there's a title in a text that mentions Brahmaviharas. Most of the time, the Buddha just segues into these practices in the directional method. And he refers to them as immeasurable. It seems like the Brahmaviharas term is something that's mostly applied afterwards by the monastic order. So we won't go too much into that. But I think we need to stop for a moment and think about why the Buddha prescribed the immeasurables, and then why Rinpoche prescribed these practices right after a war was starting. The radiating method that we're going to do, where you imagine warmth and friendliness in the forward directions, side, behind, up and down, all directions, is a safe and easy way to access the feeling of boundless consciousness, unconfined consciousness, permeated with love. Some cases, people use a very unfortunate word in English to translate this as emptiness. This has so many negative psychological associations, it's really not a great word to use. But unenclosed, not measurable warmth and friendliness. Now, before you turn into me and start saying, that seems really difficult, I can't do it. Just for a second, think of someone you love, or a pet, a dog or a cat that you love a lot, sister, brother, spouse. And if you think about that person and think about, and I know this is, we're now into a very, what we might think of as a measured, concrete object of love. But even here, if we really look at it, we can detect the immeasurable. Because when you think about an object of love, a being we love, how many kilograms does that weigh? What are the dimensions? Is it 6 centimeters across? Does it have 4 sides? Is it inside the body? Is it partly inside? Is it behind the third rib? Where is that feeling? At core, these feelings of love and protective care and appreciative joy and equanimity are not dimensionable. They don't have measurement. And I think the other helpful thing here is to think about Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away recently, used this wonderful analogy talking about wave and ocean. He used to say that as waves, if we think of ourselves as a wave, we compare ourselves to other waves and we get concerned. Are we as pretty as the wave next to us? Is this wave bigger or smaller than us? Does it move faster? But all waves are made of ocean. And love or friendliness and warmth, when it has that particular personal narrative, that's our wave experience of it. But when we contact ocean, that's the immeasurable aspect. Critically, you can't find an edge. When you draw a wave, you make an edge. When we think of ocean, there is no edge. There is no center to ocean. And the warmth and friendliness of metta, of loving kindness, has these aspects. It can be experienced as if it's something to our personal narrative, but it can also be experienced, and this is not a big Buddhistic-y thing, it can also be experienced as a boundless state. And it doesn't take any particular expertise. This is the other shocking thing about the immeasurables. The Buddha taught them to lay people and principally to non-Buddhists, people he just met in a town square. So we can do these practices. We don't need a particular, it's not particularly tough. It doesn't involve having to be an expert. But as we cultivate them, we can access this oceanic feeling. And this is not to put down the feeling of wave, because I think for most of us, you can't touch the ocean without putting your hand through a wave. So wave, personal, narrative, the individual experience is fine. But kind of like when we see all those sculptures of the Buddha doing the earth witness posture, today we're going to be doing the ocean witness posture. So this is us putting our hand through the personal experience of warmth and loving kindness and into the ocean, and then feeling that boundlessness. And I think the reason this is something Rinpoche referred to as a peace meditation is because it opens us to the unconfined experience of warmth and friendliness that doesn't identify with subject and object. As one of the Zen patriarchs says, in absorption, in concentration, people think you're concentrating on an object, but in deep absorption, there's not even one. And this practice is an unthreatening way to experience openness of mind and the feeling of the totality of consciousness. And in the words of Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, the nature of consciousness is emptiness permeated by cognizance and compassion. This is a very straightforward way of doing this practice. or accessing that state. And this was the practice Rinpoche asked us to do consistently at the center. As I said, Mark and Sonia did so, and then I followed up. And the innovation, you all know this, but it's just worth covering again for people who may not have done it recently. But the innovation Rinpoche introduced was working through loving kindness in the systems of the body first, and then the directional. And we're fortunate that we have had teachers like Mark and Sonia who deepened that practice and added a great deal of detail to the visualizations of the systems of the body. So we'll do a little bit of that as we go through. It also develops, frankly, appreciative joy. It develops the mudita for the body we have and for these systems. And then we do the radiation in the directions. And at the end, we just allow the mind to rest in the state of not applying labels, not measuring. And that doesn't necessarily mean vast or big. It just means not measuring, but with warmth and friendliness present. And this is a substantial contribution to the overall state of, to the consciousness that unifies all of us. So that's a bit of an introduction. And we'll get started. So some of this is the approach we're taking this morning is the way the practice was laid out by Rinpoche 20 years ago after 9/11. And he espoused this as a principal practice for development of peace, cultivation of peace. So we start by imagining boundless light in all directions. And this is taken from Jamgon Kongtrul's instruction that Rinpoche was using at that time. Now imagine this light coalesces above your head into a figure of spiritual inspiration. Could be the Buddha, could be Florence Nightingale or Gandhi. Imagine there's a being above the head. This light coalesces into a being. And then this comes down into your body, this light, into a pavilion of light in your heart. And the feeling is of the boundless light blending with the light that associates with your name in a pavilion of light in the heart. Now, we turn our attention to metta, warmth and friendliness. And if this doesn't immediately come forth as a feeling of a field of experience, a boundless field, then we can use prompts from our personal story, our personal history, maybe a dog or a cat, a person, some prompt that encourages the arising of the feeling of friendliness in us, or we felt friendly or feel friendly towards this being, or this being exudes friendliness towards us, warmth and kindness, care. And throughout the meditation, if we lose contact with the feeling of metta, of loving kindness, we go back to the prompt, kind of like those old ink pens you need to dip and refill. Now, with some feeling of this friendly, caring, warm feeling, we permeate the body, moving from the top down, first starting with the bones. Imagine this friendly, warm, kind feeling permeating the bones of the cranium, the jaw, and the teeth, all the solid stuff. Your vertebrae all stacked nicely like plates in the cupboard. All the vertebrae, the ribs radiating out from them, shoulder blades, the bones in the arms, the hip bones, bones in the legs, the feet, bones in the hands, all permeated with a feeling of warmth, kind, friendly feeling. Now let's go back to the top and go through the flesh of the body, imagining all the cells vibrating, kindness, warmth, flesh and muscles around the face, in the neck and the shoulders, warmth and friendliness. The arms and hands, kindness. And the torso, the hips, the legs, and the feet. Now we go back to the top. Now let's go through the senses, the eyes, feeling of loving kindness, of warm friendliness in the eyes, and also in what the eyes look out at, feeling of vision, the eyeball, and the act of seeing permeated with friendliness, kindness. And now the sense of hearing. The ears themselves and the hearing. Feeling of warmth and receptivity, solicitousness, kindness in the hearing. Now, a sense of taste, mouth and the tongue, feeling of taste, permeated with a kindness, care, friendly feeling in the sense of taste. And the sense of smell, nose and olfactory glands, openness, kindness in the sense of smell. The skin and the sense of touch, sensitivity to pressure and temperature. It's permeating this sense of touch, contact with friendliness, kindness, care. And now, some brief attention, kindness, warmth to the systems in the body. nervous system and the brain and all the messaging, feeling of receptivity, openness and kindness in the nervous system. And the circulation, rivers and streams of the body, blood and the heart and the circulation, all singing, kind, caring feeling. And the digestion, warmth and friendliness in the digestion. And the breathing. Every time we inhale, there are 300 million alveoli sacs in the lungs. If we were to sew them all together, they make a surface 30 times the surface of the human body. So with our inhalation, we're inflating a giant sail, 30 times the surface of the body. We inflate this sail with loving kindness, feeling of warmth and care and friendliness. How with this feeling of kind, warm friendliness permeating the body, we imagine it radiating forward from the body. Imagine this friendly, warm feeling permeating the space in front, permeating objects and furniture, space and beings, as near or far as feels comfortable. You may feel contact plants, forest, lakes, animals, in the forward direction with warm, friendly feeling. Now moving clockwise around your body. Imagine this warm, friendly feeling radiating out toward the right. Permeating space, objects, beings. Maybe birds, fish, dogs, cats, people, trees, plants, wind, the earth, the sky. Now behind us, continuing clockwise, feeling that this friendly, warm energy radiates behind us. As near or far as feels comfortable. It permeates the space, the beings, and the objects. Whatever may spontaneously come to mind behind you. Friendly, warm feeling. Now radiates to the left. Friendly, kind. Open, receptive, kind feeling permeating the space to the left. And now imagine it radiating down, permeating the ground, the roots, the beings, water table, with warmth and friendliness, care, feeling of interest and love down into the ground, spaces in the ground, objects in the ground. Now radiating up above us, warmth and friendliness, as near or far as feels comfortable, permeating space and beings and objects, weather, clouds, moisture, the atmosphere above, friendly care, warm, feel the feeling above. Now we notice this is a warm, friendly feeling in all directions. Feeling of open, non-clinging awareness with an aspect of love, kindness. And it doesn't have any particular edge and no particular center. Warmth and friendliness with no particular edge and no particular center. Now we come back to the heart. We turn to the particular. Think of any beings we know who need healing, any places, conflict zones, situations. We imagine these beings, these contexts permeated with loving kindness, with friendliness and warmth. And before we conclude, we'll review the practice, take note of anything that stands out, and then let it go. And then to conclude, we share the merit with all beings. Idam te punya kamma haswakya vayamotu. Idam te punya kamma haswakya vayamotu. Idam te punya kamma haswakya vayamotu. Sabbe satta sukhitantu. May all beings be well and happy. And by the power of this action, may we attain awakening. Having attained awakening, may we defeat all unwholesome states. Through the endless storms of birth, illness, old age, and death, may we help all beings to cross the oceans of suffering of the worlds. And by the power of these actions, may our teachers all be well and happy. May they abide happily, have long lives, travel safely, and spread the Dharma as vast as the sky. Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Derek, on behalf of all of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, Derek. Thank you very much.
Hey, David. Nice to see you too. Thanks for coming. Anybody have any complaints, criticisms? Those all go to Lisa.
I'll take them.
Questions? Those
I have
go
a
to
question.
Karen.
May I ask a question?
Karen?
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, Karen.
No, no, directed to Derek.
Could you briefly please comment on the method for applying this to all four of the immeasurables? I have a feeling it's rinse and repeat with all four, but I think it would be nice to just hear it for the record, because I think folks might want to continue with the practice and complete all four.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. The format, you remember when Rinpoche would often say there's a recipe, there's like a formula, a recipe, and you just change the ingredient, but the recipe stays the same. The difference is a bit in with the way he taught compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity. For me, the gift we had in his teaching was he was fearless in using just abysmal translations of the terms. So he deliberately used, frankly, really bad translations because they got at the core of how the practice is supposed to be felt rather than being etymologically correct. So he was very clear that with compassion, this is the feeling of alleviation of suffering, the protective feeling. And it's really a natural, instinctual feeling. Around here, we have an aerobic corridor. And I tell folks, if you're out for a walk on this path in the forest and you hear help from off to the right, what's your first thought? How do you respond? Is your first thought, oh, I better take a selfie? Or is it like, oh, I wonder if I could brand this moment or make money from it? Your first thought is, off you go. It's the protective instinct. It's helpful. You want to alleviate suffering. And everybody feels that way. It's just normal. I've never asked that question here and had anyone say something awful or monstrous. And that's at the root of what gets called the activist impulse. People think, oh, I think there's a feeling you have to be angry. Is there any anger in that? There's no anger in that response. It's just the feeling of wanting to be protecting and helping. It doesn't require anger. There may be anger afterwards at seeing the situation that was avoidable or harm being done. But the first impulse of karuna, compassion, is that feeling of protection and care and helpfulness. So that is the feeling we cultivate and permeate the body with the second one. And the third one is just everywhere. It's the feeling of appreciation we have in so many different contexts. This was the one Rinpoche emphasized as the balancer for compassion. If you're a caring person and you have a modicum of intelligence, we get upset by what we're seeing in the world, by the lack of care. And our radar for compassion, for seeing need to protect and help, is constantly picking up the wrongdoing in the world and seeing all the difficulties. Rinpoche specifically said you have to develop mudita, appreciative joy, as a balancer. Otherwise, you're going to get way out of whack. Your radar is only picking up what's going wrong and resonating and sensing that, and not picking up the non-zero sum victories and joys that don't come at anyone's expense. Not the things where someone's doing something and hurting someone and making an advantage, but all the things that are appreciable and give us joy that are going on all the time. Kids doing playing in the street and birds flying by, experiences in nature. There's just experiences of appreciation all the time. And so the discipline is to develop attention on that and try to develop a similar amount of attention as we give to the radar we have for things going wrong. And that feeling of appreciation, we then permeate the body. And this is, I mentioned at the start, this is a particular virtue that teachers like Mark have particularly put a lot of attention into developing. You know, this work on through the body, appreciating the systems of the body, was when Mark went into great detail on this and had these anatomy books and the systems. And as many of you know, he's done a lot of work on that. And also appreciation, you know, with his microscope work, all this appreciation that isn't necessarily self-building. I mean, you didn't make your lungs, you know, not you, the personality you, but you can appreciate them, and it doesn't necessarily augment self-clinging. So that feeling of appreciation and gladness is something, I think it's kind of the secret of the beginning of the practice, going through the body, appreciating the systems of the body. And then the final one, which seems to be the one usually, equanimity, that folks trip up on, because there's a feeling that equanimity implies not being affected. And this is not the way Rinpoche taught it. He, in response to a question about how can you cultivate detachment with equanimity, Rinpoche said, you can't be detached. You'll never be detached. You're attached all the time. You're attached to gravity. You're attached to breathing. Attachment riddles everything. The question is clinging. That's the question, the difficulty, not attachment. In fact, his lovely kind of mangled etymology of the word religion is, he would say religion comes from ligio, ligament. So it literally means to reattach. And then he would say, how can you be reattached? You've never been separated. You never will be. There's nothing to reattach. And that's at the core of the feeling of equanimity, is the translation he gave for upekkha was the feeling of higher oneness, the feeling of higher oneness, being woven into the fabric of everything, such that the particular pushes and pulls are not something we have a particular preference or avoidance of, but feeling that oneness with everything. So it's almost the complete opposite of, well, it is, of detachment. And in all these cases, I think the teaching he gave was a bit unorthodox, but that feeling of woven into everything is actually the feeling that culminates with each of these practices. Like each of them has that aspect. They culminate in a feeling of loving kindness that's woven into everything without a boundary. Care and protectiveness woven into everything without a boundary. And appreciation that doesn't have any particular restrictions or limits. It's just appreciation. So they all head in that direction of what gets called equanimity, but it's a feeling of higher oneness. Any other complaints, criticisms?
Can I do one more if nobody else does?
Mm,
I guess it's a comment / question. I was just thinking about this practice and why this practice is important for peace. And I was thinking about epigenetic war trauma in the body. And, you know, my family has that. And, you know, I've been studying trauma, and just when we did the practice and it was in the body first, it felt to me like, yes, this is the tool for bringing peace to a body that carries the traumas from wars past, you know, whether or not you as an individual experience them. And also, this is the tool that we need for people who are being traumatized today and will need to do that work tomorrow, you know? And it just felt so correct to do in the body and then out everywhere, because obviously out in the world needs it also. And I don't know, I just wanted to comment that it just felt really right to do both that way. And I hadn't noticed it or done it that way before.
thank you. You know, the Mohawk writer Alicia Elliott a year or two ago wrote a fantastic book called A Mind Spread Out on the Ground. And she concludes her chapter on trauma by pointing out that the research that intergenerational trauma in Indigenous communities is passed on, or the trauma is passed on intergenerationally. But the last sentence of that chapter is, if there's intergenerational trauma, why not intergenerational love? This is the practice, just like you say, this is the practice for that. Yeah. Intergenerational love. The other thing too is it's about cultivating if there are no edges, it's the feeling of love or protectiveness or appreciation or equanimity without reactivity. It's like, you know, have you ever played that game where you went to the edge of a building with a tennis ball and you knocked it back, you know, boom, 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 takes reaction, you know? And we live a lot of our lives with emotion that's reactive. Boom, 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 boom. And we get very little training or practice, even though it's always present. We don't necessarily turn our attention to cultivating the feeling of emotion as a field, not as a personal narrative with reactive borders. And this is a borderless practice. And it's an immersion in these four profound feeling states that don't have borders, that aren't enclosed or confined. And this immersion is extremely purifying and good for us and good for all beings, and healing. And it's accesses a state of peace that we could call internal peace, but it's not internal because it doesn't have an edge or a center. So it's not strictly either internal or external. It's peace. It's a feeling of peace. Any other questions for Karen?
Karen Meredith. And Joanna, did you have something to say, or because you're unmuted?
Oh, sorry. It was just to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for practicing.
Derek, hi. Nice to see you and stuff today and hear you. So just what you were last saying about that sort of like this, the experience, it's really powerful working from the body and establishing. And then as this, it's like I mean, my experience is it moved towards this sort of non-conceptual, unbounded in the directions. And then it was only at the end that you said, we come back to the heart, share the merit with situations of conflict. So that's a general way of practice. You're not looking to share it with, I mean, you have that idea in the beginning, sharing, or just extending the bubble of loving kindness, I guess. And somehow you're not looking through the whole thing for something particular to put it to. You just let it go. You're moving more and more, and then you share that at the. So I thank you for that, because it was really helpful to experience it that way.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, that's a good analysis, because the power of it is really the boundless, going to the boundless, and that becomes the energy source. That's the profound aspect, is the unconfined, boundless experience. And then you can apply it. So you're completely right. That's the direction the practice goes, is toward this feeling of non-conceptual loving kindness without an object. And with this immersion and healing, then we apply it.
Yeah, and also thank you for the metaphor of the ocean and the waves, because this is really a great one to be reminded of. So thank you again overall.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Well, I'm going to have to cut off all these questions now. Karen has to go take the dog for a walk, so she doesn't have time to hang around all day here. So, oh, it's good to see you all again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Derek.
everyone.
Thanks,
you,
Derek.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And to
Sign off.
Lisa and Karen for making it possible. Thank you so much. And Derek, thanks for that wonderful, wonderful meditation and teaching.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, let's not wait for a dictator to invade before we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, people are asking if we would do this again.
Sure.
I guess they mean sometime soon with the group, because hopefully
Yeah,
everyone's
sure.
going to be doing
Yeah.
it again all
How
the
about
time.
next Saturday?
Sure. Yeah.
Could we do it next?
How about next Saturday? Same time, same place? Or whatever that is.
Sure. Yeah. If you like, we'll go following Lisa's suggestion. Maybe we'll do the second one.
Yeah, Karuna. That would be
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you, Derek. That's a beautiful.
Maybe maybe
Thank
do
you.
that. And then we'll see how things go. But sure, we can return, give it another go.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, it's
He's cropped her hair.
Possible
it's
we won't
pulled
need to. There'll be world peace by next weekend, but if not, we can gather.
Yeah, let's do it anyways.
Why not?
Be well and happy, Derek. Be well.
Yeah,
and-
thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Everybody take
Thanks,
care.
Derek.
Here.
Thanks.
Thank you,
See you next weekend.
everybody.
Okay,
for
bye.
Bye.
Thanks for the opportunity,
next
everyone.
week.
Thank you.